What if I told you there is a Toyota Corolla that has been confirmed to have driven over 2 million kilometers and still runs like new? That is literally enough distance to reach the moon and back 2.5 times. Today, we are counting down 12 more automotive legends built when planned obsolescence was considered criminal and computers belonged in offices, not under your hood. Stick around because number one will completely change how you think about what cars used to be capable of. Top 1, the Toyota Corolla, 1983 to 1987. You know what is embarrassing? Missing the most reliable car ever built in your most reliable cars video. The Toyota Corolla from the mid-80s was not just reliable, it was the automotive equivalent of that friend who has never been sick a day in their life. There is actually a documented case in New Zealand of a 1986 Corolla that crossed 2 million kilometers on its original engine and transmission. To put that in perspective, that is like driving from Los Angeles to New York 714 times. The owner said the only major repair was replacing the clutch at 1.8 million kilometers, and he felt guilty about it. The secret weapon was Toyota's 4AC and 4ALC engines, motors so simple they made pocket calculators look overcomplicated. No computers throwing tantrums, no sensors having midlife crises, just bulletproof mechanical fuel injection that could run on swamp water if you filtered it first. But here is what made these Corollas legendary. They were designed during Toyota's obsessive perfectionist phase. Engineers would literally lose sleep over potential failure points. The cooling system was tested in Australian deserts. The electrical system was so simple that Cuban mechanics call these miracle cars because they can keep them running with paper clips and determination. These cars became generational wealth in countries where reliability meant the difference between prosperity and walking. When something finally broke after 400,000 miles, you could fix it with hardware store parts and YouTube wisdom. Top 2, the Peugeot 504, 1968 to 1983. Here is a car that survived actual civil wars, and I somehow forgot it. The Peugeot 504 was not just built tough, it was engineered for places where the nearest mechanic might be 500 kilometers away and armed with nothing but a rusty wrench and stubborn French pride. In 1976, a 504 won the East African Safari Rally, a race so brutal it was less about speed and more about survival. The same year, another 504 crossed the Sahara Desert 47 times as part of a commercial transport route. That is not racing. That is automotive immortality with passenger seats. The genius was pure French engineering logic. Make everything twice as strong as necessary, then add more steel because why not? The rear axle was borrowed from commercial trucks. The suspension could handle potholes that looked like small canyons. The XN1 diesel engine was so agricultural it could probably run on cooking oil, and in remote African villages, many actually did. But here's the beautiful part. While German manufacturers were precision engineering cars for perfect roads, Peugeot was stress testing theirs with civil wars. The 504 became the unofficial vehicle of African independence movements because it simply refused to quit when quitting meant death. Today, there are 504s in West Africa still running taxi routes with over 800,000 kilometers on original drivetrains. They have transcended transportation to become symbols of mechanical stubbornness wrapped in elegant French styling. Top 3, the Lexus LS 400, 1990 to 1994. Toyota spent 6 years and over $1 billion developing the LS 400 for one simple reason: to humiliate Mercedes and BMW so thoroughly that German engineers would question their career choices. They succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. The development story reads like automotive warfare. Toyota bought every luxury sedan from Mercedes, BMW, and Jaguar, then disassembled them bolt by bolt. They found over 1,400 areas for improvement. When they were done, they had created something that made German precision engineering look like amateur hour. One documented case involves an LS400 taxi in Dubai that accumulated 560,000 miles in 7 years of constant airport runs. The only unscheduled maintenance was replacing worn brake pads. The original engine, transmission, and air conditioning system never required service beyond routine maintenance. The 1UZFE V8 engine was a masterpiece of over-engineering. Toyota tested these motors for the equivalent of 1 million miles before production. They had teams of engineers whose only job was eliminating squeaks and rattles. They tested door handles for 100,000 operation cycles. But here is what separated it from German competition. It actually worked. While Mercedes S-Class owners were developing personal relationships with service advisors, LS400 owners forgot their cars needed maintenance. The only recalls were for floor mats and radio displays, hardly mission-critical failures. The LS400 proved that Japanese attention to detail could create luxury cars more reliable than Swiss timepieces and quieter than libraries. Top 4. The BMW E39 5 Series, 1995 to 2003. The E39 generation caught BMW during their brief "let's actually build reliable cars" phase before they remembered that maintenance revenue was more profitable than customer satisfaction. This was Bavaria's golden era, complex enough to be interesting, simple enough to actually work. A documented case from Germany involves an E39 540 that served as a high-speed Autobahn taxi, accumulating 745,000 kilometers in 8 years. The V8 engine never required internal work. The transmission shifted smoothly until retirement, and the suspension maintained Germanic precision throughout its service life. The M52 and M54 straight-six engines were bulletproof power plants that could run forever on nothing but oil changes and occasional timing chain tensioner replacements. No plastic cooling systems waiting to explode. No electronic modules having nervous breakdowns. Just pure mechanical German engineering from the era when BMW remembered they were supposed to build ultimate driving machines. What made these special was BMW's pre-complexity philosophy. Engineer it right the first time because warranty claims damage reputation. The double wishbone front suspension was designed by people who understood that comfort and precision were not mutually exclusive. The steering connected your hands to the road through actual mechanical linkages, not computer interpretations. The E39 represented peak BMW, reliable enough to daily drive, engaging enough to love driving, and built during the last era when German cars were engineered by perfectionist Germans instead of cost-cutting accountants. Top 5. The Land Rover Defender, 1983 to 2006. The Defender was not built. It was forged in the fires of British agricultural necessity and military stubbornness. When Land Rover engineers designed this beast, they apparently asked themselves one crucial question. What would happen if we made a tractor that could carry passengers and climb mountains? In 1989, a Defender 110 became the first vehicle to cross Antarctica without mechanical support. It survived temperatures that would make modern electronics commit suicide in terrain that exists primarily in nightmares. The same vehicle later completed a trans-Saharan expedition, proving that extreme cold and extreme heat were equally irrelevant to proper British engineering. The beauty was in agricultural simplicity. The 300 TDI and TD5 diesel engines were basically commercial truck motors that happened to fit in passenger vehicles. Manual everything, mechanical fuel injection, and electrical systems so simple you could troubleshoot them with coat hangers and determination. But here is what made Defenders legendary. They became the UN's vehicle of choice for impossible places. When humanitarian organizations needed something that absolutely, positively had to work in conditions that would make Mad Max nervous, they bought Defenders by the hundreds. These trucks have survived wars, natural disasters, and humanitarian crises on every continent. They have been shot at, blown up, rolled down mountains, and driven through conditions that would make modern SUVs void their warranties. The secret was not sophistication. It was honest engineering designed for places where failure meant death. Top E6, the Ford F-150, 1980 to 1996. While everyone debates Japanese reliability, the Ford F-150 from this era was quietly doing the actual work of America. These trucks were built during Ford's brief moment of clarity when they remembered that "built Ford tough" needed to be more than just marketing. In Alaska, there is a documented case of a 1987 F-150 with the 300 cubic inch inline six that accumulated over 850,000 miles hauling equipment between remote oil drilling sites. Temperatures range from minus 60 degrees Fahrenheit in winter to 100 degrees Fahrenheit in summer. Roads consisted mainly of rocks and wishful thinking, and the nearest Ford dealer was 400 miles away. The truck never suffered a major mechanical failure. The 300 cubic inch inline six engine was a masterpiece of industrial simplicity. This motor was so agricultural it could probably run on moonshine and prayers. Ford engineers did not tune it for performance. They engineered it for immortality. It made 145 horsepower and enough torque to pull tree stumps, while being simple enough to rebuild with basic hand tools. But here is what made these F-150s special. They were designed by people who understood that pickup trucks were tools, not lifestyle accessories. The electrical system used actual copper wiring instead of today's tinfoil alternatives. The fuel system was mechanical enough to fix with determination and duct tape. These trucks created entire economies. Construction companies bought fleets because they needed vehicles that would start every morning for 20 years without drama. When something finally broke, you could fix it without a computer science degree. Top 7. The Nissan Patrol Y60, 1987 to 1997. The Y60 Patrol was Nissan's declaration of war on Toyota's desert dominance, and they brought nuclear weapons to what was supposed to be a fair fight. This was not just an SUV, it was a mobile fortress designed to make Land Cruisers feel inadequate. A documented case from Saudi Arabia involves a Y60 Patrol that served as a desert rescue vehicle, accumulating over 900,000 kilometers crossing the empty quarter, one of the world's most hostile deserts. It survived sandstorms that stripped paint from metal, temperatures that melted dashboard plastics, and terrain that exists mainly in geological textbooks. The original TB42 engine never required internal work. The TB42 4.2-liter inline-six engine was basically a commercial truck motor that wandered into passenger vehicle duty by accident. It made decent power, but more importantly, it made that power reliably for 500,000 miles while being maintained with desert sand, hope, and occasional prayers to automotive gods. What separated the Patrol from Toyota competition was engineering superiority. While Land Cruisers still used leaf springs like it was 1955, Nissan engineered coil spring suspension that could handle massive articulation while keeping passengers' teeth in their heads. It was like comparing medieval kart technology to modern engineering. The Y60 became the vehicle of choice for Australian mining companies and Middle Eastern governments, organizations whose vehicles needed to work in places where breakdown meant potential death. When your workplace is literally the middle of nowhere, you need transportation that won't strand you there permanently. Top E8, the Mitsubishi Pajero Montero, 1982 to 1991. The first-generation Pajero was not just built tough, it was engineered to win the Paris-Dakar Rally, which it did 12 times. That is not a typo. 12 victories in the world's most brutal motorsport event, where mechanical failure often meant death in the Sahara. In 1985, a production Pajero attempted to cross the Sahara Desert, following the same route as the Paris-Dakar Rally, but carrying a full load of scientific equipment and researchers. It completed the 6,000-kilometer journey without mechanical failure, despite carrying twice the recommended payload and operating in temperatures that regularly exceeded 140 degrees Fahrenheit. The 4G54 2.6-liter four-cylinder engine was not powerful enough to win drag races, but it was reliable enough to cross continents while being maintained with sand, hope, and the occasional kind word. This motor was designed for commercial vehicle duty, but found itself powering adventure vehicles to places where breakdown meant becoming desert archaeology. But here is what made the Pajero legendary: Mitsubishi's Super Select four-wheel drive system. While other manufacturers offered you the choice between two-wheel drive and please don't get stuck, Mitsubishi engineered a system that could handle everything from highway cruising to rock crawling without breaking a mechanical sweat. The Pajero created its own cult following among people who measured vehicle capability by survival statistics rather than luxury features. These were not suburban mall cruisers. They were expedition vehicles that happened to have passenger seats and air conditioning. Top 9, the Chevrolet K5 Blazer, 1973 to 1991. The full convertible K5 Blazer was GM's answer to the question, what if we built a convertible SUV that could also survive nuclear war? This was America's interpretation of rugged utility, except with more power and a removable roof. In Colorado, there is a documented case of a 1979 K5 Blazer that served as a mountain rescue vehicle for over 15 years. It accumulated 540,000 miles climbing trails, that would make mountain goats nervous, operating in conditions ranging from -40°F blizzards to 100°F desert heat. The original 350 small block V8 and TH350 transmission never required major work. The small block V8 engines were lazy torque monsters that could pull stumps while barely registering on the RPM gauge. The TH350 transmission was simple enough to rebuild in a barn with basic tools and a Chilton manual. The NP205 transfer case was so overbuilt, it could probably double as construction equipment. What made the K5 special was its role as America's first lifestyle adventure vehicle. Before anyone knew what lifestyle adventure vehicles were, the Blazer was climbing mountains, crossing deserts, and hauling boats to places where GPS would display error messages. But here is the beautiful American logic. The K5 was designed for people who measured capability by how far from civilization they could get without dying. It was not sophisticated, fuel-efficient, or environmentally conscious, but it was honest. And in mechanical reliability, honesty counts for everything. Top 10, the Datsun-Nissan 720 pickup, 1979 to 1986. While everyone obsesses over Toyota reliability, the Datsun 720 was quietly doing the same job with less fanfare and more style. This was Japan's other answer to American pickup mediocrity, and it deserved better recognition than being Toyota's forgotten rival. A documented case from Australia involves a 720 pickup that served as a remote station utility vehicle in the outback for 18 years. It accumulated over 750,000 kilometers crossing terrain that barely qualified as roads, carrying loads that regularly exceeded manufacturer recommendations, and operating hundreds of kilometers from the nearest mechanic. The original Z22 engine never required internal work. The Z22 2.2-liter four-cylinder engine was a masterpiece of simple engineering, reliable enough to embarrass American trucks, efficient enough to make V8 owners reconsider their fuel budgets. No complicated emissions equipment, no electronic fuel injection throwing tantrums, just mechanical carburetors that could be adjusted with basic tools. But here's what separated the 720 from Toyota competition. It actually had style. While Hilux trucks looked like they were designed by engineers who considered aesthetics a waste of time, the 720 looked like someone cared about appearance. It proved that reliable did not have to mean boring. The 720 became the choice for small business owners who needed dependable transportation but did not want to look like they were driving farm equipment. When these trucks finally wore out after 300,000 miles, people would transplant the engines into other vehicles because they simply refused to die. Top 11, the Isuzu Trooper, 1984 to 1991. The first-generation Trooper was Isuzu's masterpiece of functional engineering, a truck that looked like an SUV but worked like commercial equipment. When Isuzu engineers designed this beast, they decided that comfort was optional, but reliability was mandatory. In Africa, there is a documented case of a 1987 Trooper that served as a safari vehicle for 12 years, accumulating over 650,000 kilometers, carrying tourists through game reserves where breakdown could mean becoming the main course. It survived river crossings, muddy seasons, and maintenance consisting mainly of engine oil and optimism. The 2.6-liter engine never required major work. The 4ZE1 2.6-liter four-cylinder engine was not powerful, but it was built with Swiss watch precision and truck engine durability. This motor could run forever on nothing but oil changes and the occasional timing belt replacement. It made decent torque, sipped fuel, and absolutely refused to acknowledge that 300,000 miles was considered high mileage. What made the Trooper special was its role as the thinking person's SUV. While other manufacturers built vehicles for people who wanted to look outdoorsy, Isuzu built something for people who actually went outdoors and needed to return alive. The manual transmission was so robust it could probably be repurposed as construction equipment. The four-wheel drive system was mechanical, reliable, and simple enough to understand without an engineering degree. Every component was tested to destruction, then redesigned to be even stronger. Top 12, the Volvo 240, 1974 to 1993. At the top of our list sits the Volvo 240, and if you owned one, you know this ranking is completely justified. This was not just a car, it was a mobile bank vault that happened to have passenger seats and the structural integrity of a small building. The most documented high-mileage case involves Irv Gordon's 1966 Volvo P1800, which accumulated over 3.2 million miles. But the 240 series routinely produces similar stories. There is a 1985 240DL in Sweden that crossed 1.8 million kilometers and still serves as daily transportation for a rural veterinarian. The original B21 engine has never been opened for major work. The B21 and B23 engines were masterpieces of over-engineering. Volvo engineers tested these motors by running them without oil until they seized, then redesigned them to last even longer. These engines regularly crossed 400,000 miles with nothing but basic maintenance. Some documented examples have passed 500,000 miles on original internals. But here is what made the 240 legendary. It was engineered by people who believed cars should last longer than marriages. While other manufacturers were adding complexity, Volvo perfected simplicity. Mechanical fuel injection that farmers could understand, manual transmissions that shifted like rifle bolts, and heating systems powerful enough to warm small houses. The 240's design philosophy was beautifully straightforward. Make everything 3 times stronger than necessary, then add more steel for safety. The doors weighed more than modern car hoods. The body panels were thick enough to deflect small projectiles. The safety cage could probably survive building collapses. Volvo 240s became the official cars of anti-car enthusiasts, people who did not care about speed, style, or status, but wanted something that would start every morning until the sun exploded. In university towns across America, beat-up 245s became political statements on wheels, practical, reliable, and completely indifferent to automotive fashion. Scientists studying longevity should study Volvo 240s. Whatever Swedish engineers did to achieve mechanical immortality needs to be documented and preserved for future generations. There is your countdown of 12 more cars that were built to last forever. These mechanical legends prove that somewhere between the 1990s and today, we forgot that cars were supposed to be permanent partners, not temporary conveniences. Notice the pattern. Every single one of these vehicles shared the same secret ingredients: minimal electronics, maximum over-engineering, and construction by people who believed warranty claims were personal failures. They were built when computers belonged in offices, not under hoods, and when good enough was never actually good enough. Which of these legends did you or your family own? Drop your high-mileage stories in the comments. I guarantee some of you have even crazier examples than the ones I mentioned. If these stories of mechanical immortality change how you look at the modern plastic cars in your driveway, make sure to subscribe and like the channel. We are unearthing the history they tried to bury. Let's plant the seeds for a more reliable future. The next treasure trove of automotive legends will be opening soon.